Welcome to Buddhism Demystified. I'm so excited to be kicking off this deep dive with you today. We're going to be tackling a story. It's both captivating and incredibly insightful. Siddhartha Gautama's encounter with Mara, you might have heard of Mara before. He's basically the embodiment of all those things. You know, all those things that try to hold us back? Fear, doubt, temptation. It's like this epic showdown between Siddhartha's determination to reach enlightenment and, well, all the forces trying to keep him stuck.
That's a really powerful story.
Yeah. So we're going to explore what this story really means. Is it just a cool myth? Or is there something deeper here? Something we could apply to our own lives? Because let's be real. We all have our own Mara moments, right? Those times when fear whispers in our ear or self-doubt tries to trick us up. To help us unpack all of this, I've got an amazing expert here.
Hi, everyone. I've spent years exploring Buddhist teachings, and the story of Siddhartha and Mara never ceases to amaze me. It's like this ancient roadmap for navigating the challenges we all face on the path to, well, pretty much anything we want to achieve in life.
Okay, so before we go any further, let's set the scene. Siddhartha, before he became the Buddha, was meditating under the Bodhi tree. He's determined to reach enlightenment, no matter what. But then, Mara enters the picture, and he doesn't come alone. Imagine this. A whole army of demons, conjuring up terrifying visions, whispering doubts, and basically trying to scare Siddhartha off his path. But when that didn't work, Mara switched tactics. He started tempting Siddhartha with promises of power, wealth, and let's just say, some very appealing distractions. It's like Mara threw everything he had at Siddhartha, trying to break his concentration and make him give up. But here's where it gets really interesting. Siddhartha doesn't freak out. He doesn't fight back. Instead, he does something incredibly powerful. He touches the earth, calling it to witness his truth. Well, what does that even mean? To help us unpack that a bit, I'm curious, what's the significance of this gesture?
That's a great question. And it's a moment that's packed with symbolism. In Buddhist teachings, the earth represents stability, grounding, and connection to reality. By touching the earth, Siddhartha is essentially saying, I'm not falling for these illusions. I'm rooted in my truth. And I'm not backing down. It's a powerful reminder that we all have that inner strength, that ability to connect to something solid within ourselves, even when things get chaotic around us.
That's powerful imagery. So it's like he's reminding himself of what's real, what truly matters, amidst all the distractions and temptations. But I think a lot of us can relate to feeling like those fears and doubts are very real, even if they are just illusions. What do you think? Have you ever experienced that kind of inner struggle?
Absolutely. We all have our own Maras. Those inner voices of doubt and fear that try to keep us small and safe. But the key is to recognize them for what they are. Thoughts, not truths. They might feel powerful, but they don't have to control us. What Siddhartha demonstrates so beautifully is that we have a choice. We can choose to get swept away by those thoughts, or we can choose to ground ourselves, to connect to our inner strength and wisdom, and to stay true to our path.
You know, it's funny because I used to think this whole Mara story was just a cool myth. But now that we're talking about it, it's hitting me how relevant it is to my own life. Like, how many times have I let fear hold me back from doing something I really wanted to do? Or how often do I get caught up in comparing myself to others, which just leads to feeling inadequate? It's like Mara's been pulling the strings all along. And speaking of pulling strings, before we dive deeper into how to actually deal with our own Maras, I want to take a quick moment to connect with all of you amazing listeners. First of all, thank you so much for being here, for joining us on this journey of exploring Buddhism and, well, life itself. If you're enjoying this deep dive, it would mean the world to us if you could hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and maybe even leave a review. It really helps us spread the word and connect with more awesome people like you. All right, now back to our regularly scheduled programming. So we've talked about Siddhartha's epic encounter with Mara and how it symbolizes the inner struggles we all face. But what does this mean for us practically? Like, how do we actually deal with these Mara moments when they pop up in our own lives? I'm ready to get tactical here. What are some tools we can use to face our own inner demons?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the good news is that Buddhism offers a whole toolbox of techniques for working with those tricky parts of ourselves. One of the most fundamental is mindfulness.
Okay, mindfulness. I've heard that word thrown around a lot. But to be honest, I'm not always sure what it actually means in practice. Can you break it down for us?
Absolutely. Mindfulness is essentially about paying attention to the present moment, to our thoughts, feelings, and sensations, without judgment. It's like becoming a curious observer of our own inner experience.
So instead of getting swept away by those thoughts and feelings, we're kind of stepping back and watching them, almost as if they're clouds passing by.
Exactly. And when we do that, we start to see that those thoughts and feelings are just temporary visitors, not permanent residents in our minds. They arise, they linger for a while, and then they pass away. This realization can be incredibly liberating because it helps us to detach from the drama of those Mara moments and see them with more clarity and objectivity.
I'm starting to see how this connects back to Siddhartha touching the earth. It's like both actions are about creating a sense of grounding and perspective. We're not denying the existence of those difficult thoughts and feelings, but we're not letting them define us either. It's like we're saying, okay, fear, I see you, I feel you, but I'm not going to let you run the show.
That's a great way to put it. And that ability to observe our thoughts and feelings without getting caught up in them is a key skill for navigating those Mara moments with more grace and resilience. It allows us to create some space between ourselves and those thoughts, which gives us the opportunity to choose how we want to respond.
This is making so much sense, but I have to ask, what about those times when the Mara moments feel really intense, like they're just overwhelming us? What do we do then?
That's where self-compassion comes in. Mara often shows up when we're being hard on ourselves, when we're feeling unworthy or inadequate. So in those moments, it's crucial to treat ourselves with kindness and understanding. It's like offering ourselves a warm hug instead of a cold shoulder.
Wait, so you're saying that instead of beating myself up for feeling scared or insecure, I should actually be kind to myself? That feels counterintuitive. But I can see how it would create a different energy. Like if I'm constantly criticizing myself, it's almost like I'm adding fuel to the fire of those negative thoughts and feelings. But if I can offer myself some compassion, it's like I'm taking away their power.
Exactly. It's about shifting from a mindset of self-criticism to a mindset of self-support. Remember, we all have those Mara moments. It's part of being human. The key is to learn how to navigate them with more awareness, compassion, and skill.
So we've got mindfulness, we've got self-compassion. Are there any other tools in this Buddhist toolbox that we can use to deal with our Maras?
Absolutely. Another powerful practice is cultivating a sense of gratitude. You see, Mara thrives on negativity. He loves to feed us thoughts of lack, scarcity, and dissatisfaction. But when we focus on what we're grateful for, it's like we're shining a light in the darkness. It shifts our perspective and helps us to see the good in ourselves and in our lives.
I love that. It's like we're taking back our power by choosing where we focus our attention. We're saying, hey, Mara, I'm not playing your game anymore. I'm going to focus on what's good, what's beautiful, what's meaningful.
Exactly. And the more we practice gratitude, the more we start to rewire our brains to look for the positive, to appreciate the simple things, and to find joy in the midst of challenges. This doesn't mean we're ignoring the difficult stuff, but it does mean we're choosing to cultivate a more balanced and wholesome perspective.
So it's like we're building up this inner resilience, this ability to bounce back from those Mara moments more easily. We're not letting them knock us off course.
That's a great way to put it. It's like we're training our minds to be more flexible, more adaptable, and more resilient in the face of challenges. And as we do that, we start to experience a deeper sense of peace and well-being, even in the midst of life's ups and downs.
This is all so incredibly insightful, but I have a confession to make. I'm still a little bit stuck on this whole Mara concept. I get that he's a symbol, but is he also like a real being? Like, is there an actual entity out there who's trying to mess with us? Because that idea is a little bit, well, freaky.
That's a question that's been debated for centuries, and different schools of Buddhism have different interpretations. Some see Mara as a literal being, a kind of demonic force that exists outside of ourselves. Others see him as a more metaphorical representation of those negative forces that reside within our own minds.
So kind of like the devil on one shoulder and the angel on the other.
That's one way to think about it. But the beauty of Buddhism is that it doesn't require us to believe in any particular dogma or doctrine. We're encouraged to explore these concepts for ourselves and to come to our own understanding.
So whether Mara is a literal being or a metaphorical representation, the important thing is that we recognize the power of those negative forces, both internal and external, that can try to derail us from our path, and that we develop the skills and practices to navigate those challenges with wisdom and compassion.
That's a beautiful summary, and I think it's a reminder that we all have our own Maras to contend with. But we also have the inner resources to overcome them.
You said earlier that Mara is a symbol, not just a character. Does that mean we're all kind of creating our own Maras?
That's a very insightful question. And in a way, yes. Remember how we talked about Mara representing those negative mind patterns, those klishas, as they're called in Buddhist teachings?
Well, and klishas. You're going to have to break that down for us.
Of course. Klishas are basically mental states that cloud our perception and lead to suffering. Things like greed, hatred, delusion, jealousy, all those fun things that make life difficult.
So is it like Mara is behind all that dukkha the Buddha talks about, that feeling of being stuck?
You're getting it. Mara represents those forces that keep us trapped in the cycle of suffering. And the more we feed those kleshas, the more power we give to our own personal Mara.
So every time I get caught up in a jealous rage or a fit of self-pity, I'm basically giving Mara a high five.
You could say that. But the good news is that we also have the power to starve our Mara. The more we cultivate wholesome qualities like mindfulness, compassion, and gratitude, the less influence Mara has over us. It's like we're shifting the balance of power within our own minds.
Okay, so it's not about eradicating those negative thoughts and feelings altogether. It's probably impossible, right?
Exactly. It's about changing our relationship to them. Instead of getting caught up in the drama, we can observe them with curiosity and detachment, just like we talked about with mindfulness.
So instead of saying, oh no, here comes fear again, I'm such a failure, we can say, interesting. I'm noticing a feeling of fear arising. What can I learn from this? How can I respond in a way that's aligned with my values?
Yes. That's a much more empowering approach. And it allows us to move through those challenging moments with more grace and resilience. Remember, Siddhartha didn't defeat Mara by fighting him. He overcame him by seeing through his illusions and remaining true to his path.
Okay, but let's get practical for a second. What might a Mara moment actually look like for someone listening right now?
That's a great question. And it's important to remember that Mara moments can take many different forms. For one person, it might be that voice of self-doubt that pops up when they're about to take a risk, like applying for a new job or starting a creative project.
So instead of going for that dream job, they let fear hold them back. They tell themselves they're not qualified, that they'll probably get rejected anyway, and so they stay stuck in a job that's making them miserable.
Exactly. And for someone else, it might be that feeling of comparison and inadequacy that arises when they scroll through social media. Seeing everyone else's seemingly perfect lives, suddenly they start feeling like they're not good enough, that they're falling behind.
I think we've all been there. And then instead of focusing on their own unique strengths and accomplishments, they get caught up in a cycle of self-criticism and envy. It's a classic Mara moment.
It definitely is. And it's important to recognize that Mara often uses our own desires against us. He tempts us with things that we think will bring us happiness, like wealth, status, or approval from others.
And when we chase those things blindly, we often end up feeling empty and unfulfilled. It's like trying to quench our thirst with salt water.
That's a perfect analogy. So the key is to develop a deeper awareness of our motivations and intentions. Why are we doing what we're doing? Is it out of fear, desire, or a genuine sense of purpose?
And when we start asking those questions, we can start to see through Mara's illusions and make choices that are truly aligned with our deepest values. This reminds me of something you said earlier, about how Mara often shows up when we're facing a choice, a crossroads in our lives.
Absolutely. Those moments of decision can be breeding grounds for Mara moments. Think about it. You're about to make a big change. Step outside your comfort zone. Of course, fear and doubt are going to come knocking.
It's like that saying, where your fear is, there your treasure lies.
I love that. It's so true. Those moments of fear and uncertainty often hold the greatest potential for growth and transformation. But here's the thing. We have to choose to face those fears, to step through the discomfort and embrace the unknown.
It's like walking through a dark forest. It can be scary, but if we keep moving forward, eventually we'll reach the other side and find ourselves in a new and brighter place. But if we let fear paralyze us, we'll stay stuck in the darkness forever.
And that's where the teachings of Siddhartha and the story of Mara can be so helpful. They remind us that we have the inner strength and wisdom to overcome any obstacle, any Mara moment that comes our way.
It's all about cultivating that awareness, that mindfulness, that self-compassion, and remembering that we're not alone on this journey. We all have our own Maras to contend with.
And by sharing our experiences and supporting each other, we can help each other stay on the path and move towards a life of greater freedom, purpose, and joy.
It's been such a fascinating deep dive. But before we wrap things up, I want to circle back to something we talked about earlier, that idea of touching the earth. I think that's such a powerful image and such a practical technique for dealing with those Mara moments.
It really is. It's a way of grounding ourselves, of connecting to something larger than ourselves, something that can help us feel more centered and stable when those waves of fear and doubt come crashing in.
So how can we actually do that in our daily lives? What does it look like to touch the earth in a practical sense?
There are many different ways to do it. It could be as simple as taking a few deep breaths and focusing on the sensations of your feet on the ground. Or you could go outside and spend some time in nature. feeling the sun on your skin and the wind in your hair.
That sounds so simple, yet so powerful.
It is. The key is to find something that helps you feel connected, grounded, and present in the moment. It's about shifting your attention away from the swirling thoughts in your head and toward the physical sensations of your body and the world around you.
It's like hitting the pause button on the mental chatter and giving yourself a moment to reconnect with your inner strength and wisdom.
Exactly. And when you do that, you create space for a more balanced and compassionate perspective to emerge. You start to see that those Mara moments are just temporary visitors, not permanent residents in your mind.
And that's a really empowering realization. It means that we have the power to choose how we respond to those challenges, rather than letting them dictate our thoughts, feelings, and actions.
It's about taking back control of our minds and our lives.
This has been an incredible conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today. It's been truly enlightening.
It's been my pleasure.
And for all of you listening, I hope this deep dive has given you some valuable insights into the nature of your own Mara moments and how to navigate them with more awareness, compassion, and skill.
I hope so too. Remember, the path to enlightenment, to a life of greater freedom and fulfillment, isn't about avoiding challenges or pretending that fear and doubt don't exist. It's about learning to dance with them, to meet them with an open heart and a curious mind.
And sometimes that dance might feel a bit awkward, a bit messy, but that's okay. It's all part of the process.
Exactly. And the more we practice, the more we cultivate those qualities of mindfulness, self-compassion, and resilience, the more graceful and joyful that dance becomes.
So as we wrap up this episode, I'd love to leave you with a little challenge. The next time you find yourself facing a Mara moment, remember the story of Siddhartha and the warrior in the forest. Take a deep breath, ground yourself, and ask yourself, what's the real source of my fear? Is this just an illusion?
And then most importantly, ask yourself, how can I respond to this challenge in a way that aligns with my values, my intentions, and my deepest aspirations?
This has been Buddhism Demystified. I'm your host. Until next time, keep exploring, keep growing, and keep dancing with your own Maras. And as always, if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your friends. It really helps us spread the word and continue these deep dives into the world of Buddhism. Thanks for listening.